You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tosaw from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from Cboe. The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means we are back. It is Thursday. It is noon Central. It is 1 p.m. Eastern. Do you know what's popping off in these wild and crazy markets? Well, let's find out together, shall we? It is time once again for the Option Block. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as from the network that's just blowing up left, right, and center, especially, speaking of center, especially in our middle show there, the newest addition to the network, the Futures Rundown. Glad to see so many of you are enjoying it. If you're missing it, if you haven't checked it out yet, what are you doing? Make sure you're getting the full network wherever you get the Option Block. That will bring you the Futures Rundown, as well as everything else coming at you. Crypto Rundown, Advisors Option, Vol Views, all sorts of fun. Options, Boot Camp, you name it. It's all there for you this week in Futures Options. All the hot stuff coming at you down the pike and a whole bunch more. Make sure you check it out. It's been a fun time, if I do say so myself. They dragged me kicking and screaming into the world of futures. And you know what? I'm okay with it. I'm having fun. Glad to see so many of you are too. If you want to have even more fun, you know where to go. Behind the velvet rope, theoptionsinsider.com/pro. The place to go to join us for the ongoing partay that is Options Oddities, as well as awesome pro Q&As. Had our friends from Fidelity joining us in the hot seat this week to tackle all your questions on the Pro Q&A. So lots of fun to be had there. Live streams, giveaways, all sorts of fun. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro. As we go around the horn, see who's joining us on the old program today. First, let's go out to the dark, stormy, some might say hellacious shores of Maine, where we are joined once again by the rockingest of lobsters, Mr. Andrew Giovinazzi from OptionPit.com. Mr. G, welcome back to the show, sir.
It is a pleasure to be here on just a sunny, bright, like crazy fall day. We get usually like late August. We get them, and then November comes and everybody freezes. But we got a couple more days left before our fall and our leaves fall, as is the name of the season.
I think you meant to say dark, stormy, and hellacious. So we'll just cut that in for you on the show. We'll just do you that favor as we keep on rolling out to the land where it's never dark, stormy, and hellacious because they have an amazing weather shield. Of course, talking about St. Charles, I may be heading out to that realm this weekend. That is the rumor. Maybe I'll bump into one Uncle Mike Tosaw from the appropriately named St. Charles Wealth Manager. Uncle Mike, welcome back to the show, sir.
Always a pleasure. We were making our own weather before it was a conspiracy. Or were we?
Yes, before Jesse the Body and his ilk got control of all that conspiracy noise. And then heading back out, I believe, to Cboe East. I guess we'll find out. He's been traveling all over the place of late. He is the Flowmaster, a.k.a. Mr. Henry Schwartz. From Cboe, Mr. Flowmaster, welcome back to the show to you as well, sir.
Thanks, Mark. Good to be with everybody. Yes, I am in at Cboe East, downtown Manhattan. There's actually was a ticker tape parade today outside for the New York Liberty won the women's NBA championship. So as I was coming in, there were barricades and police, and I saw some pictures. I didn't actually run out. We can't see it from our windows just because we're a little bit around the corner, but busy downtown. And yes, I've been globetrotting for Cboe. Last week I was in Utah for our risk management conference, the 39th annual risk management. And then on Friday I was at the Robinhood Summit in Miami. So now I'm kind of happy to be back in New York and where I can relax.
A lot of gallivanting to be done as we head right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, everybody. Welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we break down what the heck is trading out there. And it's another one of these kind of mixed, whipsaw-y kind of days. If you don't like what you're seeing on the screen, just wait 5 minutes. Chances are it will be markedly different. As we're kicking off the show, we're seeing the Dow off almost 0.5%, about 0.4%. By the way, the market's mixed today, listeners. S&P up about 0.25%. NASDAQ up, closing in on 0.75%. And of course, our old pal IWM up slightly, pretty much unched on the day. Of course, most of these indices kind of rebounding off their lows from the session. S&P was looking red earlier today. I don't think, the NASDAQ never got red, but the S&P did get red. We got down to looks like around 57, 86, somewhere in that ballpark, before rebounding back north of 5,800, where we're hanging out right now. A Dow still wearing it out there, though, today. And all this conspiring to get VIX pretty much not that far away from where we were this time on the Monday show. We're at about a 19.5 as we kicked off the show. That puts us up a little more than 0.75 point, about 0.8 point. Let's see, we got up to a little bit north of 20 today. Got up to about almost 20.25 today. We have sniffed the 20 handle a couple of times. Also yesterday, briefly flirted with it, 20.06 before coming right back down. So we keep trying to kiss 20 this week, but not really hanging out there for too long. And then right back down again today. VVIX looking a little bit frothier right now than it was back on the Monday show. 111 up 6 points, so firming up a wee bit. We'll see what the rest of the day has in store for us, if that continues or if it starts to come back in. Let's go around the horn the opposite of the way we went. Let's start out there in the hallowed halls of Cboe East. Mr. Flowmaster, before we get into what's catching your eye from this week, you just kind of said you've had two interesting events you've attended recently. You kind of gave us a hit on all things RMC, but more sessions happened after our show last week. So if you have any final thoughts or takeaways on RMC that you didn't get a chance to hit on the show last week, have at it. B, you were just down at the Robinhood Summit. None of us have ever attended a Robinhood event. An intriguing one for options traders because it was index options heavy. You were there. So, I mean, that in and of itself shows the more of an options bent than Robinhood has, dare I say it, ever had in the past. So maybe if you have any insights or key takeaways from that one you want to share with our audience, have at it. And then C, what's catching your eye in the market today, sir?
That's a lot of questions. So RMC, you finished up with some great panels and presentations on volatility. The first day, I talked to you Thursday. So the first day was really kind of about products, a lot about ETFs and the new things that Cboe had listed, like variance futures and options on VIX futures. And then we got kind of more into the math on Thursday. So it was more on volatility, dispersion trading, which is effectively selling index and buying the component names in volatility terms, and kind of some of the nuances there, and also really how to play that into the election, because that was the other big theme is everybody. I think everybody in finance is kind of trying to figure out what they should do and how things are going to play out through the rest of the year when we get into the election. So it was all really interesting. It was the 39th annual Cboe Risk Conference, which is kind of amazing. And then the Robinhood Summit this was their first ever big event for their top clients. I believe there were almost 1,000 people there, including our CEO and global president, a lot of fireside chat type of content. I was brought in to basically work with a couple colleagues and do a little teach-in on index options for Robinhood investors. So Robinhood has never let their clients trade index options. They've always been an ETF and single stock option platform. And later this year, they're actually doing two things. They're offering the index products, but they're also releasing a new desktop application. I believe it's called Legend, and really kind of trying to cater, I think, to kind of a more active base than their already active traders. They the data shows, and they've published, Robinhood trades about 6 million option contracts a day. So they're neck and neck with Schwab when you look at the 606 reports, which report that data, and that one of their leaders said that 94% of that volume is done through mobile, which is kind of amazing. And so by offering a platform, I think, you guys all know, kind of more sophisticated options traders and people that are much more interested in spreads and kind of, calendar trading and everything else, that you need more real estate than a phone is going to give you. So that, and really, when we look at it, out of that 6 million contracts, we can estimate probably a third of it is SPY. And, as most listeners know, SPX and XSP track the S&P 500 just like SPY, but they're in their cash settled index products, which have some important differences and advantages, and that's really what we're trying to do. It's all about education, and it was fun to kind of see everybody. And I'll send you a picture, but Cboe actually made some Cboe branded Nikes, which are pretty sweet.
Going for that Robinhood crowd. I love it. A Flowmaster descending on the Robinhood event. It does seem somewhat contrary to their ethos, the notion of a desktop Robinhood app. But you're right. If you want to really go after and target the index options trading crowd, you're not going to do that on your iPhone. So yeah, it's a different audience, perhaps, they are going for, which is interesting. What else is catching your eye out there in the markets this week, sir?
Well, we're kind of in a sideways range, right? I mean, we had a little sell-off yesterday. Then we had, Tesla earnings are kind of astounding. The stock's up 20%. The straddle was only pricing in about 8. So that's pretty impressive. But VIX around 19 to 20. This is pretty much a side effect of everybody being somewhat nervous into the election. Not so much nervous about what's going to happen, but just nervous because it's such a toss-up. I mean, we had John Harwood was the keynote speaker at RMC, and he's actually interviewed presidents all the way back to Reagan, and he said, you look at all the polls, it's really a toss-up, which makes it kind of interesting when you look at some of these, the presidential betting sites, including Interactive Brokers, which will now let you bet on the election outcome because it was okayed by the courts, which is not at all 50-50. So that actually led to some pretty interesting discussions about, so who's betting on these on these presidential betting sites, and is that, how does that compare to a poll? If the polls are 50-50 with a 3 or 4% margin of error, and yet you have people putting some money to work with a pretty different set of odds, kind of what's going on there. So, but in terms of market action, I think we're just going to be kind of sideways and choppy, literally for the next 2 weeks, right into the election, and then it'll get really interesting, depending on how things shake out, and if it's contested and ends up being a few weeks or more of kind of process to figure out who's going to run the country.
Intriguing stuff. You mentioned Tesla. I'm sure we'll get to that in a little bit more, breaking it all down. Yeah, stock popping hard. Intriguing stuff to be had out there. Speaking of intriguing stuff, we go out now to the land of St. Charles. Mr. Uncle Mike, it's an Uncle Mike type of day if you're just looking at the S&P. If you're looking at Dow, maybe some other things, maybe not so much. What's catching your eye out there today, sir?
Well, a couple things. And just to expand on those presidential betting sites, I think they're interesting from the standpoint. So I take you back to the 80s movie Over the Top, when Sylvester Stallone was an arm wrestler and he needed money, so he bet on himself in Vegas. And so, number one, I don't know how arm wrestling betting laws work, but part of me thinks that maybe some of those sites might be used as a hedge by certain lobbyists, where if Trump promises something to somebody, they're like, okay, if he wins, we'll do really well, but if he loses, we're in trouble. So we better bet on Harris, because if he loses, then this is our way of kind of hedging ourselves. So I'd be curious as to, and I know there's really no way to truly find this out, but I'd be curious as to who is betting, but also why are they betting? And are there ways to arb your bets in some way, shape, or form? And who knows, maybe by the next presidential election, we can be doing call spreads and put spreads on presidential underlyings in some way, shape, or form. You never know. So I think that's very interesting. When I was looking earlier this morning, the November 6th straddle, I believe it is, on SPY was trading at roughly 2.4%. And so apparently in the option space, that's what the expected move is in the S&P when we are a couple of weeks out, or a week and a half, I should say, out from election day, for how far it's going to move. So apparently option traders are not expecting Armageddon, at least not for now, but you never know, that could change. I was actually shocked by how little the market moved with all the election fiascos last election. So anything can happen. And I guess the other thing to add to that would be anything can't happen also. That's why we have markets. So in terms of some other things that are catching my eye, bonds are actually getting some buyers after the last couple of days that they definitely were not. Silver is establishing itself and holding the 30 mark. And so it's not rallying like it has been. It's actually down a few pennies today, just referring to SLV, of course. But it is holding over the 30 mark for a few days, and that's good for the silver bulls. And then, of course, just I think Henry had already mentioned Tesla. That's up 20% on the day. That's the main thing that is lighting up my screen on the individual names. But there's also another name that we don't talk about very often that's actually moving a pretty decent amount today, and that is Big Blue, IBM. We don't really talk about that too much on the trading block, but IBM down just under 7% on the day. So we do have that. But aside from that, I am not seeing much movement on my tape or on my screen for the day.
I don't know, Uncle Mike. I don't know if the folks at IBM got the memo. Chip-related and chip-adjacent stocks are not supposed to go down. I didn't think it was in the bylaws of the market that they could. So I guess they didn't get the memo out there. In Beamer land, we'll have to go reach out to the folks.
They definitely didn't get the memo that it's not supposed to move that much either way. Yeah. That's not an IBM-style move, true. That's for sure.
True, that is not IBM-esque, to put it mildly out there. As we now go out to the place where nothing is mild. You heard his description at the top of the show, listeners. Dark, depraved, hellacious. That's what the shores of Maine are like today. Mr. Rock Lobster, I hope you survive your segment here, given just the hellacious conditions you're beaming in from. Oh, what's catching your eye, sir?
Yeah, I think, we have I guess there's like two tales. One is people don't quite know what's gonna, there's nobody knows what's gonna happen after the election. The fact that the U.S. doesn't have a tabulated vote and literally within, 5 hours, 3 hours, whatever, when the polls close is beyond ridiculous at this point. But it is what it is. And I think that contributes to part of it. And I think that's contributing part of the volatility. In general, realized vol is like, 9%? VIX is 19. So the market has basically been pricing around $200 in SPX, $20 SPY, give or take, on this. Mostly, again, in my view, I kind of think this is a Y2K. It feels like that, where, planes are going to drop out of the sky on January 1st, and didn't quite happen that way. So there was kind of a little vol into the New Year's. I think this is going to be the same. Likely one of the two of them will be elected. There'll be some people complaining about it. How bad will it be? I don't know. But from a market point of view, ultimately the market cares about earnings. We'll assume that Republic will survive. It has survived worse, much worse. We had elections during the Civil War, as I recall, if people don't, if they could read history. So we will survive this as well. So the market is pricing this at around 4%, which is, we had those kind of moves pre-market. I think when Trump was elected, everybody was expecting Hillary. When last election, volatility, VIX was actually in the 30s, because if you recall, the sentiment was just so bad, like the lockdowns didn't stop, and half the states are doing this, half the states are doing that. So there was a lot going on prior to that election, and then we had, of course, the miraculous vaccine right after. So VIX dropped like from the mid 30s to the mid 20s, and then took a while for the end of the year to kind of roll out. So this year, are we going to get anything like that? It's one of those things where people don't quite know, and I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of speculation on who wants to stay in power and who doesn't, but nobody knows. So that's why the volatility is where it is currently. And I would say that holding the straddle value, it's acting very much like a earnings cycle. And I expect that vol to stay there until the election. Now, as far as, different sectors, look at things. Okay. Bitcoin, all of the crypto seems to be doing a little better. The betting market right now, on IB, is 60-40 to make a dollar, Trump's favor, which is surprising, to be honest. But there it is. And that's what most of the betting lines are currently. Is somebody going in there and piling in to hedge themselves? Totally possible. Totally possible. So, but again, those betting lines, the more people bet Trump, the more the odds are going to change. So just be mindful of that. And as far as stocks go, Tesla had pretty decent earnings. The stock wasn't doing much, I think, again, because Musk has gotten political, and the stock basically was sitting there doing nothing for a couple of weeks. And then there was kind of this relief rally, like, oh, Tesla free cash flow went up, and in general, there's some, pretty good news. And also other stocks, Taiwan Semiconductor, a lot of the big tech stocks. IBM actually had not bad earnings, but it wasn't. The stock is basically from up $132 in 2023, so it's up $100 in like a year and a half. So I think they're expecting top end. Somehow IBM has gotten into the rarefied world of sort of a top end tech company as far as multiples are starting to get. But overall, I think earnings have been okay. Bank earnings have been pretty good. So stocks are going to rally when earnings are good. If you want, look at how, where people are kind of placing bets on the election. Green energy stocks are doing not well. Oil stocks are kind of flattish to poor. I think there's still, no matter who wins, they have a government spending problem. And that's why I think gold is still kind of moving along. So, we just got to get by. And I think once November 7th rolls around, people will just be relieved that it's over. And maybe we get back to some sort of normalcy. That would be my hope. But again, trading, sometimes hope is a 4-letter word. And I will end it there.
A 4-letter word indeed. Let's see if the markets are swearing up a storm or are they lighting up the tape and just celebrating joyously. The answer is, kind of mixed across the board. Actually, seems like a lot of our friends are a wee bit light today, even though they are starting to pick up a little bit here. Let's start in VIX land, as we are wont to do, listeners. Is VIX lighting up the tape? Again, it depends upon your frame of reference. If 430,000 contracts sounds like a lot to you, then hey, by all means, have at it. It obviously is not as much as we've seen recently, but also when I give you this next data point, it might put it in a little bit more context. The ADV continues to retreat from its ridiculous recent highs of close to 1 million contracts a day, down to about 768, a more manageable level for VIX. So when you hear that, you hear 430, you're like, oh, we're more than halfway to this new lower ADV. I guess that makes some sense. We're in a weird world, listeners, where we hit massive amounts of ADV in the dog days of summer, and then we come down heading into an election. Just weird times we're in. Is SPY light in the world? Oh, by the way, what's the big dog in VIX today? A whole bunch of Nova 20s going up out there today, 81,000. So you take those out, there's even less. There's even less going up out there today, listeners. We got that synthetic, looks like the Nova 19 synthetic against the 20 calls going up again. For size, somebody loves that trade. Outside of that, not a heck of a lot going up out there. You can say the same for SPY. SPY not really lighting the world on fire either. 4.25 million. We expect, that's close to where we expect. Maybe expect a little more this time of day. 4.33, maybe closing in on 4.5, 4.25. It's knocking on the door there. The ADV 7.25 million out there. The S was looking pretty light. Is it catching up? Yeah, it's still looking pretty light, but managing to catch up a little bit. It was struggling to beat the 1.5 million level. We expect around 1.75 million this time of the show. It's at about 1.65 now. So closing in on what we expect, but a little bit of a sluggish start out there for the S. People are surprised. They're not used to this red color. What's this red color we saw in the morning in SPX? That's not in my handbook. Small caps, 544,000 contracts on the tape. The ADV 1.18 million. And our old pal, the Q's, doing some numbers. The Q's having a more than respectable day. We usually expect the Q's around 2.25 this time of show. 2.5 million right now. So looking a little bit heavier, a little bit frothier out there in Q's land. The ADV nearly 4 million, 3.84 million. So we'll see if the Q's get there. Q's are a weird beast. They do lion's share their paper in the first half of the session, then they kind of gently drift the second half. So we'll see if they get to that 4 million. But if the first half is any indicator, looks like they're on the right trajectory. Let's go out to single names. Is it a banger? Is it an explosive day in single names? The answer is no. In fact, I'm looking at these numbers list. I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. This is really, we talk about a top 10. This is really a top 3, maybe even a top 2 day today. Nonetheless, we'll break it all down for you, listeners. Number 10, it's Palantir, 214,000 contracts, $43, pretty much even, up about half a buck today. You know the song and dance with them. They've had a pretty good year. Number 9, it's Mara, 1780, off about a quarter, 1.5%. So crypto love not carrying through to today's session. That'll put a smile on Uncle Mike's face. Good for number 9, 216,000. Number 8 is the Amazonians, all the way down at number 8, 186.68, up about $2 or about 1%. So getting back some of what they gave up earlier in the week. 226 on the tape for them at number 8. Number 7, SMCI, 46.10, up about $0.75 today. So popping hard out there. Well, not hard, but popping. moving slightly upside. How about that? For SMCI, this is not a huge move, but a decent one, 1.5%. 256,000 contracts on the tape for the number 7 spot. Number 6, good old MicroStrategy, 221 and a third, up 740, almost 7.5%, nearly 3.5% just today. So, my goodness, hit a new 52-week high of about 231 this morning before coming back down. They say it's up over 240% on the year. My goodness. MicroStrategy, number 6, 285,000 contracts on the tape. Number 5, it's AMD, 153.15, up about a quarter today. So kind of unched for AMD. Number 5, like I said, we're at number 5. We're only at 280. We're not even breaking 300,000 all the way at number 5. So it's very much a top-heavy day today in our top 10. Number 4 is the Fruit Company, 230.36. A lot of threes in there. Off about 40 cents, so kind of a rounding error day for the Fruit Company as well. 367 on the tape for them, and they're all the way at number 4. So like I said, it's really a top 3 day. Kicking it off, number 3, it's SoFi, 696,000. So at least that's respectable. SoFi, 1086, up about 44 cents today, nearly 4%. So nice little move for them out there today. On the week, they're up nearly 10%, 90 cents. So a little bit of a run here for SoFi this week. Interesting out here. I heard a nugget this morning. People talking about football, that there's apparently a nightclub in SoFi Stadium you can go to while you're watching the game. It's the most LA thing I've ever heard, but intriguing stuff nonetheless. Number 3, SoFi. Number 2, it's NVIDIA. Let me say that again. Number 2, it's NVIDIA. When's the last time I said that, listeners? It's been a while. A 1.74 million, so also a pretty light day for NVIDIA, not even hitting 2 million. 139.5, kind of unched on the day, not really a big mover for NVIDIA today. Today, it's all about what the Flowmaster was talking about. Good old Tesla, 256.86, up about 43 and a quarter, a little over 20%. Quite the banger. 3.75 million contracts on the tape. Intriguing stuff. Before I looked at it, when I first heard the analysis of it, as I was traveling around and doing something, I heard the report about Tesla earnings. I thought, oh, they're going to come hard for this thing because all their profit was in this credit. They can't make money on the cars, they're making money on the credits. But apparently the street likes what they saw out there. I guess they're at this point now where they've had so many bad cycles and bad announcements that I think any bloom on the rose is a good thing. Man, this is pretty good though, 20%. So folks liking what they're seeing out there. It'd be nice to see them make money outside of credits on maybe the actual cars that they make. But hey, it's good. The street likes it today. More buyers than sellers. Who am I to judge? 3.75 million contracts on the tape for the number 1 spot today. Looking at the week here, we had GM on Tuesday. Yesterday, our friends formerly across the street, now I believe down somewhere near Newport News, Virginia, I believe, Boeing. They've had just a rough couple of years out there. AT&T, Coke, good old CME Group across the street from us here. Tesla, Beamer, and then today, American Airlines, Southwest Airlines, and a little chain called Texas Roadhouse, another one that I wish I bought a year ago because this stock has been on the rampage all year. Just banger. Not quite MicroStrategy maybe numbers, but pretty good for a fast casual beef chain. So hot stuff. You know the dance by now. Listen, luckily for you, we got hard data in our hot little hands just for you because we like you. Hot off the presses. You can find it on the website, theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the Options News and Articles tab. If you did that, you looked at the earnings move results. This is the immediate announcement stuff, listeners. Let's go to our old pal, Tesla. They were obviously popping off yesterday after the bell. Let's see. They were at 213.65 going into their announcement. They were pricing in 6.7%, listeners. They delivered, like I said, 16.4% in the immediate post-earnings move. As of right now, of course, they're up over 20%. So quite the tier for Tesla. So premium buyers, I doff my cap to you. You are looking pretty good out there. Southwest Airlines popping off before the bell today. 4.1% is what they were pricing in. 30.75 is where they were trading. And they had moved close to 4% as of the time we ran this report. Let's see where they are right now. They're off 5.5% now. So they have exceeded that straddle ever so slightly out there. Beamer. Uncle Mike was just talking about everyone's favorite, the beloved Big Blue. They were on the 23rd after the bell. They were at 230, 2 3/4 when they popped off, listeners. They were pricing in 5.8%. They delivered 5.5%. So pretty much right in line with expectations. They have since outperformed a little bit, about 6 3/4% to the dark side right now. So some hot names popping off. We have a ton of these, listeners. You can head on over to the website, theoptionsinsider.com. Click on the options, news, and articles tab. There's pages upon pages just of move results reports just from today and yesterday. We've got a ton, let alone what's coming up the rest of this week and into next week, listeners. Man, we've got a lot of... Oh, I was just talking about this one. Let's hit it. Let's go out to fast casual beef, shall we? Texas Roadhouse after the bell. Ticker symbol TXRH. Up $2.50 or 1.3% just today. Year to date, up 52%. Going back a full year, which is when I kind of first discovered this name, and I said, man, what is this place that has a huge line outside? I pulled the old Peter Lynch. You pull up into the parking lot and say, what is this store? I should buy this stock. Turns out it was Texas Roadhouse. $85. They're up 89% over the past year. So you don't need to whisper the magic letters of AI. I guess you just need to whisper reasonably priced beef. Folks will beat a path to your door. This thing on the rampage here. And I walked in, I said, man, I should buy, let alone the stock, I should buy a franchise for this thing. This thing is printing money. And lo and behold, here we are, listeners, a year later. And I do not own a franchise for it. I'm still talking to you folks, even though I do enjoy it. Texas Roadhouse, 24th after the bell. 179 is where they were trading going into their announcement. They're pricing in 10 1/4. In the past, they've moved 5 1/4. My goodness. So pricing in fully 2x. And given this chart, who am I to naysay that? They have been delivering all year long. So everyone talks about the Chipotles and everything else. We've laughed many times and wept many times about Portillo's on shows like Oddities. Meanwhile, Texas Roadhouse taking up all the oxygen in the restaurant game right now. My goodness. If they're going to have another banger tonight, I guess we shall find out. Speaking of finding things out, let's find out what the Flowmaster has in store for us. It is time for the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, listeners, it's Thursday. The Flowmaster wants to rest from his travel, but we say nay. It is time to unleash him upon the options markets to find some weird and unusual flow. Going to kick things off. And this is a newcomer, I do believe, to the network. This is AVPT Inc., ticker symbol AVPT. This is an independent software vendor of SaaS, so software as a service to solutions in Microsoft 365. All right, very, very specific what this name does. Trading $12, pretty much even, up about 1/4 today, a little over 2%, so a decent day for them. A banger year, putting up close to, not quite Texas Roadhouse numbers, but pretty darn close. They're up $4.50 or nearly 60% this year. So AvePoint on the rampage, as the kids say. Let's see what's lighting it up out here today. I'm going to guess, because it's being highlighted today and the Flowmaster's talking and the thing's been on the rampage. I haven't looked yet. I'm going to guess, listeners, probably a boatload of calls. Let's see what we have here. Oh, we've got some Nove 12s. Mr. Flowmaster, don't let me steal your thunder, sir. What caught your eye in everyone's beloved AvePoint, sir?
Yeah, this is a name that I'm not familiar with at all, but I did see a 2,000 lot or just about a 2,000 lot sweep buyer of the Jan 12 calls around 11:48 New York time. Total actually looks like close to 3,000 in a very quick blip. And, you know, for a name that averages literally just a few hundred, the average daily volume in this name is 210 contracts. So this is a very thinly traded name. Somebody swept up almost 3,000 calls. Stock immediately popped from 1178 to about 12. And it's kind of hanging out around 1201 right now. I'm not familiar with it. It does have cloud in the description, so that's good. I don't know, maybe it has AI in there somewhere too. I actually looked at yesterday's flow, and yesterday was actually also high, over 1,000 contracts, but that was on the put side. And that was just a 20-cent put seller in the Nova 11 puts. So that guy's obviously doing fine since the stock is here. But I don't know why somebody wants into this, but as you said, the stock's really kind of at the high end of its range. I don't know if that could be near an all-time high, but certainly near a 52-week high. And somebody putting on a position that, it's November 15th, so they're going to go through the election. At least that's what that's if they hold on to it. But it does look like somebody's looking for it to trade higher. It does have earnings November 7th, so this also could be something right into earnings.
Yeah, I was just looking. The earnings gives me a little bit more solace on this trade. November 7th is a hot day. A lot of names we've been profiling lately, all popping off on November 7th. I don't know why that's the hot day, but everyone popping off on November 7th, including the Flowmaster's new favorite, AVPT. Mr. Rock Lobster, are you a big fan of AVPT, A? And B, have you ever done the Peter Lynch and sat in the parking lot of a Texas Roadhouse and then wanted to buy the stock, sir?
I thought I did that with Portillo's, but so far I've been just totally wrong.
Yeah, Peter Lynch has screwed us on that one, hasn't he?
He totally screwed. Okay, find me a better Italian beef, but anyway, I digress. But this, I don't think these are unreasonable calls, to be quite honest. You got a little duration. It's a $12 stock. Like Henry said, it has, a couple of the right words. So it wouldn't take much for it to get rolling. So it's a pretty good sized chunk of paper betting on the earnings, and it doesn't have any weeklies yet. So it has not caught the retail or institutional bug, I would say, yet. Yeah, pretty light volume everywhere, light open interest. So maybe this is the time for this stock, but it has had quite a run this year. It's up 50%. So again, I don't think they're terrible calls for the price and what they could get out of them. So reasonable. We got some earnings, so reasonable call purchase.
Not the craziest we've seen. I don't hate it. I don't love it, but it's not the worst we've seen, definitely. To damn it with faint praise as we keep on rolling. Let's see what else the jet-lagged Flowmaster has spotlighted for us today. Let's go out to a name we talked about once or twice. This is Sonova Energy International Inc., ticker symbol NOVA. This is solar and energy storage name out of Houston, listeners. Trading 5 1/4, up about a quarter, a little over 4% today. So a nice little move for them today. On the year, not quite as nice. They were trading about $8.50, so they're off about 330 or about 38% so far this year. They've had a couple goes at it. They got up to about a little over $16 in December of last year, and then they came for it and drove it all the way down to pretty much its low for the year of around 3 1/3. Looks like it got somewhere in that April time frame. And then they tried rallying it again. They got it all the way back up to about 12 1/4 just a little over a month ago, mid-September. And then it's literally just came for it again, right back down $7 exactly, $12.24 to now $5.24 today. So they have just taken this thing to the woodshed twice. Mr. Flowmaster, sir, is the third time the charm. What did you spot out here in Sonova Energy International Inc., sir?
Yeah, so this is the November 8 calls, and this is kind of a weird one, actually. And I'm not super familiar with the name either, but the big trade, so the total option volume is 3 times normal today, and that's led by the Nova 8 calls with about 11,000 of them bought in the 25 to 30 cent range. Also, a couple thousand Nova 7s bought in the 45 cent range. This is all when the stock was a little lower, like $5-ish. So the buyer seems to have kind of caught a little bit of a lift in the stock. I actually looked back a little bit, and there were a few other large positions opened up. The November, actually in the Nov 7 and 10 strike, almost 15,000 over the last couple weeks. But that's actually a call spread buyer. So that was somebody paying 45 cents for the spread. So it almost, but if you look at the chart, even with all this kind of heavy call buying, this stock has just kind of been not really doing much. Today's a little bit of an uptick, but it really is kind of suffered. It's down from $10 at the end of last month to where we are right now. So that's not a very happy situation. It kind of feels to me like somebody's hoping or kind of pushing for a little bit of a bounce. It does have earnings, I think, next Wednesday, the 30th. So maybe we'll get something out of it. But I got to say, the one time I was in South America and saw a Chevy Nova, and somebody laughed and said, in Spanish that means doesn't go. So Nova, maybe it's not going to do anything.
I knew his name sounded familiar, so I went and looked, and we did talk about it back on Options Oddities, listeners, on the pro side back in July. We talked about an 8-9 vertical that went up 4,000 times. So same strike. Somebody has been tilting at this 8 strike for a while. This goes back to July 26th, listeners. They bought that 8-9 vertical for around 30 cents, and looks like the stock went out at 8.59, so they made money on their vertical. So that's the last time we really dove into all things Nova. Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, do you recall that from Oddities? And what do you think about somebody coming back to the 8 strike this time for November, sir?
Interesting. This is, you can't help but think this could be a potential election bet here. We got November 15, kind of solary, greeny company. So it's a pretty big bet, although I don't think their earnings have been, they've had a little bit of earnings issues lately. But again, they have a lot of the right buzzwords, but this could be I feel like this is maybe, it's definitely they're buying them for earnings. But also you could have the double whammy with the election play as well. I think you get a twofer here on this one. But let's say they're paying 30 and they're 35.40 right now. So it does have, let's see, 15,000 times 45 cents. I don't think they're terrible, but it's for a stock that has not done very well, and all of the green stocks they're in kind of free fall lately. If you look at them, they're looking for something to pop pretty hard, in my view. And they could very well get it, but the stock has been in free fall since mid-September, from almost $13 down to, $5. So it's, again, I don't think it's a terrible bounce play, but they would have to have good earnings, and VP Harris would have to win the election.
Yeah, I would say if Trump gets in the White House, no bueno for the stock.
Yeah.
Speaking of no bueno, let's just pay off what we talked about on the Monday show, listeners. We talked about somebody coming in and really swinging for the near-term upside in BSX. This is Boston Scientific. They bought 5,500 of the 91s expiring tomorrow. They paid nearly $1 for these bad boys, so they were not messing around. The stock was 88.40, so they wasn't that far out of the money, but they obviously needed a decent move. The thing that made it exciting was, of course, there were earnings yesterday before the bell, so we said we'd know on Thursday whether these worked out or not. A total of 9,000 of those had traded on the day, so folks were really hot on these. Earnings are over, and they were no bueno, listeners. The stock got crushed down to about 83.86 yesterday. They did try to reverse things today. The stock rallied. In fact, intraday today, it hit 88.70, so actually a little bit north of where it was on the Monday show. But now it's right back down to 85.57. So you had a brief moment in time, not enough to make money on these, obviously, but maybe you could have salvaged a little bit of their value. Not much. I think most of this juice is obviously gone now. That's the danger of playing in the weeklies, listeners. We checked right before the show. These were still open. In fact, about 12,000 are open on this strike. So this one looks like a big swing and a miss. You're out a little over $500,000 on the trade we profiled. And then obviously if you add up all the flow, and not all the prices were the same, obviously, it's going to be a lot more than that, probably closing in on $1 million. So if not more, if all 12,000 were buys, then definitely more. So yeah, a bit of a rough one. We thought it was weird why folks were lining up to swing for the fences in Boston Scientific, but we thought, we'd put it out to you folks. You folks are the ultimate arbiters at the end of the day. We said, hey, somebody just paid 95 cents for a whole bunch of these AVPT 91s expiring this week. At that price, are you a buyer or a seller? Our audience, the prescient folks that you are, 53.8% said sold to you. 46.2% were a little bit more generous, said you would buy them, in which case you're out on these right now. But intriguing stuff out there. Once again, our audience, the savvy bunch that you are, we're leading the way in the right direction as it's time for me to lead us into Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, let's see what we have on the docket for our Monday episode. Speaking of Monday episodes, Mr. Uncle Mike, we were just talking on the Monday show, I think last week, we had that whole discussion about Columbus and how the date that he discovered America is not even being taught in schools anymore. You pshawed that, then went and tested your own kids on it. Turns out they didn't know either. So it's just not being taught anymore. And we kind of joked about that on the show, and also the new findings that apparently DNA testing says Columbus is now not Italian, but Spanish and Jewish. And we have a listener on YouTube, Redetached, said, and here I thought Christopher Columbus was Portuguese. So throwing Portuguese into the mix as well. Christopher Columbus is apparently a man of many nationalities out there these days. So Mr. Uncle Mike, A, what do you think of that? Are you down with Columbus being Portuguese? And then B, what are you keeping an eye on until the Monday show, sir?
I have no problem with whatever Chris Columbus's nationalities are. I always thought he was Italian, and he got the Spaniards to finance his discovery. But whatever the case may be, and I don't know I'm not trying to get into the history of him being a slave owner or anything like that. But to me, it had to have taken a lot of courage for someone to sail the way with which he did, with the fear of falling off the edge of the earth, because that was real back then. And obviously, it's not the case now, but or it wasn't the case then either. But gotta be honest with you, I'd be kind of scared if I was thinking that there's a chance I might fall off the edge of the earth. So with that being said, a couple things with which I'm watching, seeing if we can get back to the new all-time highs in the S&P 500. We're probably about 70 points below them. Watching to see if bonds will continue to sell off. Today's it's kind of taken a break from that, but definitely watching that and seeing if precious metals will continue to go higher. It's taken a break from that a little bit today. So a lot going on in terms of the movements and obviously the change in power of the leader of the free world. It's kind of a big deal. So continuing to watch news from that, at least if anything for entertainment purposes.
Yeah, if you want, I guess apparently the latest breaking conspiracies in the historical circles was Columbus Portuguese. A hot thing. I had no idea that was the thing, but apparently it is. That comment took me down a rabbit hole of intriguing skullduggery, but I digress. Mr. Rock Lobster, same question for you, sir. What are you keeping an eye on until the Monday episode, sir?
Well, we're watching the same movie every day, I feel like. I think, the earnings reports have been good, but it doesn't seem to matter too much. And, when VIX hangs around 20... things can happen, although it's definitely, it's a mechanical feature of what we've got with the market. So I say we're going to stay in suspended animation. And if there is some kind of October surprise, that would shake things up maybe a little bit. But as of right now, what you see probably is what you get until November 5th.
And Mr. Flowmaster, sir, what are you seeing and what are you getting, sir, until your next appearance next week?
Well, certainly I'll be paying attention to the kind of the politics and geopolitical things. We've still got plenty of big earnings. It's funny. I looked at the Intel straddle has repriced up about 1% from where it was before Tesla. So, as you know, when we get kind of a big outsized mover, everything else recalibrates a little bit. So I think the earnings will be a good distraction for the next week or two, and then we get into the election, and it'll be a tense couple of days, I bet.
Oh, is there an election coming up? I hadn't heard, sir. I should check my news feed. Unfortunately, listeners, that music means no more news, at least not for this show, listeners. But you know what? If you're excited, you want more content in your lives, certainly if you're hanging out in the pro, keep hanging out I'll be back on TWIFO in a little bit, chatting with our friends from CME and Scott Bauer from Prosper about all things lighting up the futures options market. So stay tuned for that. If you're listening on demand, like I know many of you are, then by all means, hit next. After you finish this show, TWIFO should be there waiting for you with bells on, with all sorts of fun futures options goodness in tow. And Mr. Flowmaster, sir, if folks want more Cboe goodness, where should they go? What should they do, sir?
Just head over to Cboe.com/RMA, which is Risk and Market Analytics. That's where all our platforms and data live. And feel free to poke around Cboe.com. There's now, I suggest people start keeping a close eye on VIX 1D and VIX 9D, as well as VIX, just because we're into this period where you're going to see some. We kind of, the consensus at least is it's going to be kind of quiet for the next week or so, and then maybe there'll be some fireworks. And that those different tenor VIXs kind of let you keep tabs on what the market is expecting.
Interesting to see what happens when all those Robinhood kids start slinging some XSP, sir. Should be an intriguing time. I'll have to mess around with that Robinhood desktop app. That just sounds wrong in all the right ways. I'm here for it. All right, check it out, listeners, at Cboe.com/RMA. to learn more. And Mr. Rock Lobster, where should folks go if they want to learn more about all things Pitt?
All things Pitt, 888-TRADE-01. And you hear this year's show, you get 10% off. Just say, hey, I just heard the Pitt, and I want my 10% off. So there you go.
There you go, indeed. And last but not least, Mr. Uncle Mike, sir, where should folks go if they want more Uncle Mike goodness in their lives?
Well, if you would like a pumpkin spice portfolio review, go to stcharleswealth.com. I'll be happy to look over where you're at from a financial standpoint with your retirement accounts and give you some advice on it. stcharleswealth.com. Feel free to check it out.
Check them out, indeed. That is going to do it for us on the OB. Like I said, back again in a little bit for TWIFO, then back again tomorrow for a little bit of vol viewing. Always a fun time, listeners. Then we're back again on Monday, another episode of the Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
The Option Block is brought to you by Cboe. Cboe's suite of S&P 500 index options, SPX and mini S&P 500 XSP options, allows traders to speculate on the direction of the market, generate income, and hedge for downside protection of their portfolio of stocks. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/SPX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of Cboe Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively Cboe. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the Cboe products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.